What if I told you there's a device about the size of a power bank that has all the power of a giant AI data center? No internet needed, no cloud, no subscriptions, nothing. Well, a US startup called Tiiny AI says they've actually built it. And today we're going to dig into what that really means. I know, it sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? An actual AI supercomputer that fits in your pocket. But here's the kicker. The company behind it just got this wild claim officially verified. So just how powerful are we talking about here? 120 billion. That number, that's the number of parameters in the AI models this little gadget can supposedly run totally offline. To put that in perspective, that puts it right up there in the same league as some of the biggest, baddest models out there. This was such a big deal that Guinness World Records actually just confirmed it's the world's smallest personal AI supercomputer. Insane. Okay, but to really get why a device like this is such a game changer, we first have to talk about the problems, the trade-offs we're all making with the AI we use every single day. You know, the AI that pretty much all lives in the cloud. First and foremost, privacy. Every single time you type a question into a cloud AI, your data, your questions, your private documents, everything, it leaves your device and zips off to some massive corporate server farm somewhere. With offline AI, your data never leaves the device that's right there in your hand. And then there's the environmental cost, which is just staggering. The data centers that power this whole AI revolution are basically energy black holes. We're talking about them consuming as much electricity as entire countries. This little device, on the other hand, just sips power at around 65 watts. And finally, there's accessibility. Cloud AI is totally useless if you don't have a solid internet connection. And let's be real, the most powerful versions are usually locked behind some pretty expensive monthly subscription. This idea, though, it suggests we could go back to actually owning our technology outright. You know, this quote from Tiiny AI's director, Samar Boj, really just nails it. We believe intelligence shouldn't belong to data centers, but to people. It's all about taking that power away from these centralized giants and putting it directly into our hands. It's a vision of, well, democratization. So the big question is, how on earth did they pull this off? How do you shrink a data center into a pocket-sized box without needing some crazy power-hungry GPU? Well, the secret sauce really comes down to two key software innovations. Okay, so the first piece of the puzzle is this thing called TurboSparse. Here's a way to think about it. Imagine a huge AI model is like a giant building with billions and billions of light bulbs. The old, clunky way was to turn on every single light bulb for every single question you asked. It's just wasteful. TurboSparse is way smarter. It's smart enough to only turn on the lights in the specific rooms it needs to answer your question. This just slashes the amount of wasted energy and computation. And this right here shows you the difference perfectly. On the left, you've got the old school model just firing up everything, a total brute force approach. But on the right, you see TurboSparse. It's surgical. It activates only what it needs and gets the same result with just a tiny fraction of the effort. It's just efficient. The second ingredient is an open source engine called Powerinfer. Think of this thing as a super smart traffic cop living inside the device. It intelligently directs all the different parts of the AI task to whichever processor is best for the job, whether that's the main CPU or the more specialized neural processing unit, the NPU. It's this super efficient management that lets them get supercomputer performance out of what is basically consumer-grade hardware. And yeah, when you look at the hardware, it's built on a modern ARM processor, pretty similar to what you'd find in a high-end tablet or laptop. This really proves the magic here isn't some exotic, expensive hardware. No, it's the incredibly clever software. And super important, it supports popular open-source models that you know, like Llama and Mistral. All right, so the promises here are absolutely huge. I mean, they're almost revolutionary. But, with any massive tech claim like this, we've got to pump the brakes a little and approach it with a healthy dose of skepticism. We got to ask the tough questions. So the company is out there claiming it can achieve GPT-4 level intelligence. Whoa, that is a massive, massive claim. And look, while the device can run models with a similar number of parameters, that doesn't automatically mean it's just as good. True intelligence, the nuance, the reasoning, the creativity, that can only be proven by independent, real-world testing. And then there's just the simple laws of physics. You're packing all this processing power into a tiny little box that runs on 65 watts. that raises some immediate questions, right? Like, if you're really pushing it, how long can the battery possibly last? And just as important, what about the heat? A device that gets too hot to even hold or has to slow itself down to cool off isn't very practical. These are the critical engineering hurdles that are going to define what it's actually like to use this thing. And maybe the most important detail of all is the one they haven't announced yet, the price. What's this thing going to cost? Is it going to be an affordable tool for students and developers, or is it going to be some super high-end gadget for a tiny audience? The price tag is really going to determine whether this thing is a revolution or just a cool curiosity. So let's just sum up the skeptic's view here. The Guinness record, it's for being the smallest, not the most powerful or the fastest. We have no idea how the marketing claims stack up against real-world performance. There are no independent benchmarks to look at yet. And we're not even going to see the full launch until CES in early 2026. The bottom line is, they've still got a lot to prove.
But okay, even with all those questions hanging in the air, the Tiny AI device isn't just happening in a vacuum. It's a really powerful signal of a much, much bigger shift that's happening across the entire tech industry.
If you look at the history of computing, you see this pendulum that just swings back and forth. We went from these giant centralized mainframes to personal computers on our desks, and then we swung back to centralized cloud computing. This device, it represents the pendulum swinging back again, this time towards decentralized, local processing, what a lot of people are calling edge AI. And the implications of that swing, they're profound. It means less reliance on a handful of big tech companies and their massive data centers. It could mean a shift away from this endless subscription economy and back to actually owning our tech. It could bring powerful AI to developing nations, to remote areas with spotty internet. And ultimately, it signals a huge resurgence of privacy-first computing. Just think about what that enables. A journalist in a high-risk country analyzing sensitive documents without ever needing to connect to the internet, completely safe from surveillance. That's a game changer. So all of this leaves us with one final, really fascinating question. Look, the cloud will always be needed for training these enormous models. But for actually using them, is this little box the first real sign that the era of AI being chained exclusively to the data center is finally coming to an end? Well, I guess we're going to find out soon enough.